Hey there, Eurus here, and welcome to Community Life. Here we talk with amazing human from the community world about their life journeys and learn from each other. Today we have a conversation with Phoebe Shin Venkat, a senior community consultant, an experienced speaker, a board member at Community Overcoming Relationship Abuse, an active volunteer, a candidate for city council at Foster City, and the person I loved talking to from the first Zoom. So, hello, Phoebe.
Hi, Yuri. How are you?
I'm great. It's been so long to our conversation,
Yes.
to our second conversation. It's so fun.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
couldn't
second,
wait. So glad
but I
we're
feel like
talking
I've
now.
I've known you for years. But here we are. So tell me, how do you feel when Fitbit bars go green?
Yeah. Now I have an Apple Watch, but yes, I used to always wear a Fitbit. Now I kind of sort of actually my Apple Watch is charging right now. I don't wear it as much anymore because I try to not be tracked by so many things because we're already being tracked by so many apps and other things. But in terms of figuratively, when my bars go green, when I feel like I'm firing on all cylinders, I love that feeling. But I also think it's important to let the bars go down a little bit. And it's okay to be tired, to get rest, right? That shouldn't be a luxury. So I'm trying to balance it or integrate it. Um, Aiming for bars going all green and then aiming for rest and relaxation when I need to.
We are talking about general bars. So how do you recharge your batteries?
Ah, that's a good one. Different ways, right? When I really, really need to catch up on sleep and things, I will listen to. This is going to be interesting. So most people, if they want to relax and go to sleep, they might listen to some relaxing story. I listen to scary horror stories on YouTube, or I listen to an audiobook that's scary, like Silence of the Lambs or Interview with the Vampire, because I find the narrators very soothing. So even though the stories are full of horror and murders and deaths, I find those so soothing, and I find that strange that I find that soothing. In terms of recharging mentally, right? Not my physical, there's so many different things. Like I like to be outside. Luckily, I'm in California, so I can, every day is almost very sunny, so I can go outside, go for a quick walk, a longer hike. Um, I like to go to the gym. I want to go more, but let's not kill ourselves. So I like to go to the gym and work out. I love just meeting up with people, grabbing coffee, having conversations like this. I think that I find that recharging. Um, Reading, I'm an avid reader, so I read physical books from the library I take out. I listen to books on Audible. The genre I'm most, I think, in love with right now are autobiographies. And I
Hmm.
especially like to listen to autobiographies because then you hear the person's inflection. You hear if the story is sad and they're almost crying or they're so excited. A book I just finished listening to is by Leslie Jones. She's a comedian and she used to be on Saturday Night Live. And her book had me laughing so hard, but also crying. And I remember I would listen to her all the time because the book is super long. So I'd have it playing when I was like doing my makeup or cleaning or something. I'd be talking back to the book, like, girl, did you really do that? Because it felt like she was talking to me. And I'm thinking if I had gotten the library book version, the actual physical book, it wouldn't feel like a conversation. It would still be good. It would still
Yeah.
be funny. But the fact that she was laughing and talking and it felt like I was with her is really cool. So lots of different things. Something else I love is live events, like live music specifically and live comedy. I love stand-up comedy.
So are you fallen asleep while listening those scary stories, or do you listen till the end and then like, okay, I'm out?
You know what? It depends, Yuri. Like sometimes I know I'm tired, but I need that extra push. So that story won't push me into sleeping while they're talking about something really scary. I try not to listen to the whole story, which is kind of interesting because the whole point of a story is you're supposed to listen to it. But if you think about it, little kids, right? Their parents read the story to them, and they
Hmm.
usually get up to a certain page. Like when I would read to my son when he was little, it's rare I would finish the book, right? Even
Yeah.
if it's a short book, because he'd already be sleeping and snoozing. So I feel like it's that way. You feel like a little kid again because you never really find out, maybe later you go back and listen, but many of the stories I only hear the first 20 minutes of, and then I'm off in scary dreamland.
And what about scary movies?
Oh my God. I love scary movies. Like the scarier, the better. It's so interesting. Like I can't stand seeing any shows where they're doing surgery and cutting people. But if you have me watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Jason, Michael, I love all those kinds of movies. I also like psychological horror stories where there isn't any murder, but it's
Hmm.
more like about someone slowly going maybe crazy because something they did bothered them, right? Or something somebody did to them is like traumatizing to them. I find those scary, but I also can relate because I've been through a lot in my life, and I feel like sometimes I like scary movies because either I can escape from it or it helps me remember like I've been through stuff and I can overcome it too.
What was the scariest stuff that you've been through?
Um, Different things like when I was in my 20s, I was in a relationship that ended up being very abusive, right? Physically and mentally. Because I always say, well, because I was too young to be in that relationship, but I feel like maybe that was part of it, but it was also because I am someone who trusts people. I
Mm.
take people at their word. And by the time I trust somebody, I might trust them too much, and then they haven't earned the trust. I think trust is something you earn it and then you continue to earn it, right? So today you trust me, I trust you, but I have to continue to show you that I'm trustworthy enough to be your friend, to be in your life. And I think at that time, hadn't learned that that's what someone is supposed to do for me, not just me do for them. So I was able to get out of that abusive relationship, but I always remember, you know, how it made me feel, how scared I was to be in that relationship. And also I felt ashamed because I felt like I'm such a strong person, right? Especially when I was starting to tell friends. I mean, there was friends that I hadn't told until that person was out of my life. And my friends were like, wait, you're this strong feminist person. You're so vocal, right? You don't take any shit from anybody, and I said, yeah, I'm that person, but I'm also the other person. Like each of us, we are like many layers, right? So
Mm.
you can be strong. We were talking about this before, about someone else on your pod that was very strong and at the same time very vulnerable. And I think that's the interesting and beautiful thing about humans is that we don't have to be in one mode, right? And I felt like I was trying to hide the vulnerable side because I didn't want to let anyone down. And I realized I actually let myself down a lot, that I probably could have gotten out of that situation if I just could learn to be more vulnerable. So that's why I don't balk at sharing this, because I know that perhaps even if it's one person listening or watching your pod that can say, okay, I'm going through that, or I have gone through that. It's not weird. It's not my weakness. It's something that happened and we're overcoming. But I've turned that now into something where I can give back, right? Because I was able to survive and now thrive through that trauma. I'm on the board of a local nonprofit in our county here in California called CORA, Community Overcoming Relationship Abuse. And I'm lucky and I get to be on the board of that organization. We have an excellent staff they are experts in what they do, right? They serve people in our community who are going through domestic violence and relationship abuse. They help them with legal, legal help, mental health support, housing, things like that. So I get to be one little piece of that puzzle. Um, and that helps me kind of go through it.
How did you get out through those relationships? How did you get out of them?
That one was tough. I don't know what triggered it. I think it's always like what was that phrase, death by a thousand cuts. So every time I would explain for this person in my head, I would say, well, they don't mean that. They're going through things. Their mental health is compromised. That's why they're treating me like this. But I don't know what, it wasn't one incident. It was just, I think over a few years where I realized is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, is make excuses for this person's behavior and continue to hide myself? So then I decided, okay, I need to do something. We were living together, so I contacted a friend who happens to be a lawyer, and I asked him, like, and first he was surprised. He's like, "You really?" Like, he couldn't believe it, you know? And I was like, "Yes, me really. This is actually happening all the time, unfortunately, to all kinds of people, women, men, um, non-gender conforming, all kinds of people this is happening to, because we're human. We let
Yeah.
people in our heart, and this is what happens sometimes." So he was able to help me with like paperwork and getting together, like a what we call a restraining order. So the person has to stay away from me, and then he had to leave my house, leave our apartment. So that was all like the physical aspects, right? The physical aspects can be done pretty, I wouldn't say easily, but like a checklist that you go through. But I think in terms of overcoming it, I think that's something I'm still going through. It's
Mhm.
not going to be something that, oh, that part's over in my life, I'm going to get over it. It's just like when you mourn, there was a mourning period. I mean, it sounds weird to say you mourn a terrible relationship, but you mourn like the person you used to be. You mourn that, and then you have to move on. I don't think about it day to day, but I know that I always think about it with gratefulness that I'm in a safe relationship now with someone who truly cares, that I have a support network. That was the thing. I had a good support network. I just didn't tap into it earlier, right? I had that all along.
Yeah. So one thing is to deal with it yourself, and you are keep dealing with it in your mind, but you also started and keep helping others. So I'm curious, what motivates you?
Yeah, I think that's that community builder effect, right? Like we're never going to be people that are satisfied with, okay, I solved the problem for me. We have to think, I always think about, and I know many people in the community space are like this. We think about, how can we not use our experience, but how can we relate our experience to others so that they feel comfortable? Maybe it's not an abusive relationship. Maybe it's some other kind of rock that somebody else needs to move, and they just don't know where to begin, right? So when they hear your story of moving your rock, then they feel like, okay, maybe I can give this a go. I can try, And I think it's important that people also see us for who we really are, right? Because we were talking about social media before the show, and how it can be very daunting. You get judged on certain things on social media, so a lot of it is like the highlights of
Yeah.
people's lives and professional accomplishments. It's rare, although you see it more now, that people talk about traumatic things or things that they're overcoming. I think the more that we can share that along with the happy wins, I think that's going to be better, because it normalizes what everyone is going through at one point in their life or another.
But I feel like to do that, you have to be super strong, because if you are sharing your trauma experience, like you are becoming even more vulnerable, and
Mm.
you still can't deal with it, you can get yourself into more troubles.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I think that I didn't really realize that I was that strong, right? I think part of it for me is that I wanted to start overcoming some of the intergenerational trauma, right? I'm a daughter of immigrants, and I can't speak for every immigrant. I know that in the Chinese community, I'm Chinese, that you don't talk about those kinds of things. You don't talk about abuse. You don't talk about any kind of trauma. You just keep working hard, and keeping your head down, making sure other people are happy with your work, going to good school, studying hard, and all those, it's important to work hard. It's important to study hard, sure. But you also need to be a person, right? You also need to have the room to fail and the room to get up. So I want to help. I don't know that I can end it in my generation, but I want to show an example to my son, who's now in high school, um, of what a strong person and a strong woman actually means. A strong woman doesn't mean I'm a boss babe and I do 12 hours of work a day, and then I work out for 4 hours, and I do this and do that. I'm not knocking anyone who does it. If you're able to do that and you love it, go for it, girl. But that's not me, right? I'm like, there's days that I can boss babe it out, but then the next day I need to decompress, right? So I think that that's really important to show that strength really is vulnerability and vice versa. And I want to
Yeah.
help break those intergenerational, like those intergenerational trauma. And I think about what my mother had to go through as a single mom, and all the trauma she's been through. And I know that she did the best she could with the circumstances she had, being an immigrant to this country, not having a college degree. English is not her native language, right? So she had very little opportunity. She made a lot out of the constraints her life gave her. So I feel like I have so many, opportunities
Yeah.
with less constraints. So I need to be able to show up for other people. And by doing that, I feel like I am showing up for myself.
So let's start from the beginning. Tell me about your
Yeah.
parents. Who are they?
Oh, my parents. Okay, so my mother is Hannah, and everyone says their mom is the best. Truly, my mom is the best. I mean, she's just, maybe best is not the best word to even describe her. She's a woman that I always say all my positive traits I got from my mom, and all my not so positive traits I got from my dad, you know. But hey, my dad still brought me here, even though, my mom divorced my dad when I was very young, about 7 years old, and he was pretty much what we call here in the US a deadbeat dad, right? Someone who wasn't involved. And actually, he would only be involved in certain times. Like he would send me like Bible scriptures and things like that. But he did ever send like any money to help raise me. He never really called to check in to see how I was doing. He was concerned about whether I was going to church on Sundays. And as when I was little, I was like, that's so, I already knew, I'm like, that seems hypocritical that you're preaching about me going to church and yet you never pick up the phone to see how I'm doing. But I don't want to dwell on that too much because I realize, he's still a part of me. I do see some of my traits in him. Like my mom tells me he loves to dance, or he loved to dance when they were dating. And I'm like, I love to dance and go to concerts. I'm like, so I got that side from him. But I would say that everything else I really did get instilled from my mother. I think the community building aspect and the relationship building that comes from my mom. When I was little, she showed me such great examples. It's so funny. When I was little, I didn't realize this. Now that I can zoom out and see. For example, when she first came to this country, like I said, she didn't speak English well or at all. She didn't have a college degree, so she got a job in a factory. And in the factory, there was all these different kinds of people. So it wasn't just other Chinese. It was like Chinese and people from Africa, Germany, everyone, Thailand, everyone working together, not always getting along, but they had a goal, right? Every day they had to produce a certain amount of widgets or whatever they were
Yeah.
making. So she used to bring me to these like potluck Fridays. So there was always one family hosting every Friday, and they would share their food and we'd bring like supplementary food. So from that, I'm like, that's how I became so greedy, because I'm like, wow, I'm eating like Thai food, I'm trying African food, German food. I didn't think it was weird at all to be around people that didn't look like me, didn't sound like me, grew up really differently. And I have to thank my mom for that. It's not like she did it to be a teachable moment. She did it because that was her life, right? These are the people she was around, and she was trying to build bonds with them. So I love hearing stories about back in the day. I love what little I can remember. I remember being in people's houses and smelling like the food cooking and playing with other people's kids, other, co-workers of hers. So, that's where I got like that instinct to kind of always be reaching out to people. You can never learn enough about other people. And it's interesting when you learn about somebody so different from you start to learn about yourself, if that makes any sense. It's like you kind of look deeper into yourself.
Curious, did your mother tell you something bad about your father?
No, you know what? Even though she could have went on and on about how crappy he was, she never did. She never blocked me from him. She never like said anything negative about him. I mean, I know negative things because I remember now when I go back and think, I remember their arguments. I remember the way he treated her. I know that, but she never said a bad word, even though she could have, right? So I think that that's something that is amazing about her. because she's graceful in that way. Like she doesn't hold those grudges. She understands. She felt empathy for him when she didn't have to. She could have easily just said, he is someone who didn't even bother, right, to take care of his daughter after we divorced. But instead, she realized that he was going through things as well, right? Physically, he had some ailments. Mentally, he had some things going on. And I felt like, wow, now I can see that she was very empathetic. So I try to be empathetic, even when sometimes I just want to be snarky and petty.
And it also sounds for me like she let you take your own decision, like if you want to talk to him or not. And I'm telling this because my mom also divorced my dad when I was like five,
Oh,
6 years old. And the crazy thing that I have no memories of him at all. So I have just a
oh,
few, like up
yeah.
to 3 moments in my life. And the craziest thing that I remember, it was like when I was like 7 or 8 years old, and he called, he's from another country, and he called like, and she took the phone, and then she was like, do you want to talk to your shitty dad or something like that? And I was like, no, I don't want to talk to
Oh,
him. So it was so, and now I'm just remembering this. I'm like, oh, it was so crazy. Why did he
yeah,
do that? Like maybe you didn't catch up together and you divorced, but like, why did he do? And it's crazy, but I sometimes feel bad about this. But from another
yeah,
part, why I asked you about your father, because I have no memories and it's so crazy. And the craziest part is that I don't really want to have those memories. I don't even want to understand, because I'm kind of afraid of this part of myself. Like, who is this person? What if I don't like him?
mm,
What's going on and all this stuff. But yeah, I totally understand what you're talking about and your story. And yeah,
yeah. Some things is like, and thank you for sharing that with me. I mean, I think it's hard because there's no one right answer, right? Because for your mother, like perhaps the pain she felt was so strong, she couldn't, like, she didn't have like, we have to think about like coping mechanisms, right? Like, did our parents have the coping mechanisms? I don't think they did. My mom didn't have access to therapy and all these other things, she just had to work, raise me. So despite that, she still made some good decisions around like not talking about my dad. But the thing is, that doesn't mean it was a bad decision for your mom. It means like that's what she knew to do,
yeah,
right? And that's it's so tough because it's not one right answer for everybody. And no matter what,
definitely.
like I actually have a very negative view of my dad, and I'm trying to work on that because I realized by hanging on to that view, even though my mom isn't the one that instilled it, but I know because I remember getting those Bible newsletters from him and being like, this guy is a jerk. Like he does not care about me. And he kind of messed up like my relationship with like religion a lot because
Mm,
I was like, well, is this what God is about? It's like you treat people one way and then you
wow.
tell people you go to church. So for years I was very distrustful of any kind of organized religion, right? And now it's different. I go to church now, more on YouTube than in person just because of schedules. But I realized that it doesn't, just because he practiced a certain way and it was hypocritical, that doesn't mean that's the way I'm going to tap into my faith. So in a way, him being like this, being someone I couldn't depend on, it made me a better person because I realized I'm like, I don't want to be that person. Right. So when you're telling me, like, hey, you don't know what your dad is like, what if you don't like him? That could be true. You may not like aspects of him, you may love aspects of him, but perhaps some of the aspects you work on in yourself are aspects of him that you don't even know are right. Like
Yeah,
I try to
exactly.
work on those things.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, totally. So yeah, as you've told, there is no answer that fits everyone, but yeah,
yeah.
sometimes I'm thinking about this, thinking like, oh shit, why is life so hard? Anyway,
Mm-mm.
so you are empathetic person, so totally, definitely. And I wonder, have you ever regretted putting yourself in someone's shoes?
I did. I do sometimes because I think with being someone who's what we are called empaths, right? we're able to, I want to define it in case anyone who's listening doesn't know what that means. It's like you're able to put yourself in people's shoes without even having to go through the experience. There's definitely been times where people take advantage of that, whether it was on purpose or not. But I know that there was like a family, a mother, a single mom, and her son, and her son was around my son's age. We met her a few years ago, and she was spending some time in our city and some time in another city. And I, she gave the appearance that she was not doing well, that they needed things just to live, right? She was getting items from people that were used, so I felt very bad for her, and I thought, I have so much in my life, so I gave her not only like money but my time, right? I gave her my trust. I think that's the part I felt most betrayed by, is
Mm.
not because I gave her some cash here and there. It was more that, I let you into my home, our sons became friends, and then to find out she didn't actually have any financial issues. It was more like, I'm not sure why she pretended she did, but she had like a different persona when she
Mm.
was in our city than when she was in her home city. In this city, she portrayed it as, I'm a destitute single mom raising a child, and I thought, oh my gosh, we need to band together. So I think I felt really bad that my trust was violated, but at the same time, I'd rather be someone who learns a lesson than someone who closes herself off and says, no, you know what? From now on,
Yeah.
I'm not going to trust people, because I can be that. I could have gone that way. And I fight every day to not be that way, because I think it's a sad way to live, to think that everyone is out to get you or to trick you. And I think about, even though I really don't agree, I really don't like what she did, I also think about what brought her to those steps. Then what kind of trauma or other kind of things is she going through where she has to essentially lie. So I try to be grateful that I don't have that life, and that, I was able to help her. Um, and I was able to move on. But it was tough. I felt very betrayed. I think I felt betrayed also because I told other friends to help her too.
Yeah.
And those people gave of their time and their resources. So I felt like, oh no, people are not going to be able to trust me. But I realized sometimes we are our own worst critic. Like, people understand things happen, and it's okay. And I now have come to terms with, she's not a bad person. She made some bad decisions, but who knows why she did, right? I don't live her life.
Yeah.
All I could do is just hope that she and her son are okay.
It's interesting. When I was in my like 20s in the university, I read this book and it was like some masculinity book and like, yeah, you don't
Yeah.
have to trust anyone. They have to earn your trust. You have to be like this,
Yeah.
you have to be this wall and they have to like, you have to be like this person. And I was like, yeah, I will be this person. Everyone have to gain my trust. And then I was like, wait a minute. Like, does it mean that I also have to gain everyone's trust? Does it mean that I have to kind of like go and talk to people and from this perspective that either I'm worse than them or I'm better than them? Like,
Mm.
why? It's
Mm.
it's impossible. It's impossible to, compare people. And sometimes I'm having these conversations with my friends and then like, oh my God, I've met my CEO in the elevator. It's such an amazing person. Like, oh, like have you talked to them? Like, no, I didn't. How could I? Like, they are a person. You are a
Yeah.
person. You are humans. You can talk about, you can talk together. No, no, I can, they are amazing, this amazing human. And I'm like this, and I'm like, you are still humans. So I totally get what you're talking about. But the moment you are not closing and getting people as they are, I feel like it's so much not even easier to live, but I would say it's so much more interesting to live because you're
Yeah.
opening yourself to all those different experiences. Even in this your story, I bet you still had some good time with this person, and your
Mm-hmm.
sons were friends and they had a good time. And yeah, she kind of betrayed you, and still, I feel like it's amazing that you are not closing your heart to other people. And I'm curious, how was there a moment where you were thinking like, oh, I should close myself and don't trust anyone?
Yeah, I think I did. I did have that moment where I was like, I'm stupid. Why did I do this? Why didn't I see the signs? But then I'm like, am I stupid because I care? It's not it. I think that it's tough because I always think that you're either like a maker or a taker, right? I mean, I don't want to think of us so binarily, but I'm someone who I don't want to take, I want to make, right? So whether that's
Hmm.
making connection, relationship, making something valuable for somebody, right? Making a path in somebody's life, that's important to me. So I do struggle with that. I still do, right? Because now, but now when I feel like my spidey senses are tingling, I listen to those spidey senses earlier. But I don't think I'll ever get it 100% right. I think that sometimes, and I don't even know that this person set out to betray me from the beginning, right? I can't make that call because I'm not that person. But I just think, it's something I work at. I think that's why I read so much and I listen to podcasts a lot and listen to books a lot because I'm trying to understand the craziness of humans, that like,
Is it
why do
even
we like love?
possible?
It's not possible, right? Like, I'm only scratching the surface, but I think that's why I love autobiography so much because I'm like, how is someone else thinking about this,
Yeah.
right? And I think that sometimes that takes all the pressure off of me because I feel like we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to, show up and be an exceptional person every day. That's hard to do. I find that really hard to do. And I don't know that I'm an exceptional person every day. Sometimes I'm a crap person, and that's okay. You know, um, Maybe I have disappointed people. I know I have disappointed people and frustrated and angered people, and I'll probably do it again. Maybe it wasn't to the same level as this person who betrayed me, but it's still something to think about is that you're on the other side of the coin too, right? You're not perfect, nor is that something we should be striving for. But I do think that keeping my heart open is something I work actively at, right? I'm actually seeking out, poetry and things like that kind of teach me. It's so interesting. I feel like even though I do go to church, it's like my faith is mostly based in like literature and like
Mm.
learning about people and things and trying to find a framework that fits me and fits my heart and how I approach things. And I don't always follow it, right? Sometimes I will just maybe close myself off, but it won't be a long time because I realize I can't live like that, right? Because I think that the more you can open yourself up, it's this amazing feeling when you click with somebody, and I know I've had people tell me, that when they talk to me, um, they feel like no one else exists. And I'm like, wow, I'm not even trying that, but it's because I'm not the kind of person just to talk to you or anyone else just to talk, right? I want to make a commitment to understanding people, to learning about them. So if I'm really doing that, that means I have to take the good with the bad, right? And at times I'm going to be disappointed, I'm going to be betrayed, and I have to be able to say, okay, that didn't work out. But like you said, what are there any good memories? There absolutely is. There are many good memories, and those are things I can look to and just move on.
How do you make those people feel like there's nobody else in the world when they're talking to you?
I don't know. I wish I could sit in their shoes. Because when the first person who told me that, I was like, oh, they're just being nice. And I'm like, well, that's a weird compliment, because usually people are just being nice. They're like, oh, you look nice or whatever. It's very surface level. That was a very specific compliment. So after hearing it several times from different people, I was like, this is interesting. So I try to look at myself, zoom out and look at myself and how I operate. I think it's because attention is something that's one thing. Attention is sorely missing. I think even more so these days. I'm not going to run around and say, oh, it's all social media's fault, right? Social media is part of it, but I think attention span is tough. Like sometimes you're talking to somebody and they can't help it. They're like looking at their phone. They're like, yeah, okay, what? And I'm not saying they're bad people, right? But it's like, is it that important? Like, what's happening on the phone that's more important right now? right? And if there is something, I try to say beforehand, like, hey, I'm expecting maybe there might be a call from my son's school when he was little, right? So I have the phone here just in case. But
Mm.
then I want to focus on the person. And it's just something I don't think is special, but apparently it's really special because I think a lot of the time society teaches us, the person in front of you may not be the most important person. Look for who's better, faster, smarter, more attractive, more this, more that, who can get you connections. And it's just like, I find that all really distasteful.
Yeah.
Um, I know that's part of navigating through life. I don't like to navigate through life that way. I find it hard not to be authentic. And maybe that's hard, not so great for me sometimes because being authentic means not everyone's going to agree with you, not everyone's going to like you, but I can't be anyone else but me. So I think that authenticity, even though I didn't realize that I was authentic, I think people gravitate towards that because they want to be more so like that.
Where is your love of Scotch and cigars from?
Scotch and cigar. Okay, so I think definitely it's from my maternal grandfather. So when I was little, I used to remember him smoking a pipe. And a pipe has a very particular smell, right? I'd be like drawing, like he'd be sitting in a chair smoking his pipe, drinking a little scotch or whiskey, and then I'd be at his feet, like coloring something or playing with my dolls. So I always remember that smell. And I'm not advocating for anyone to start smoking or anything or drinking or anything like that. And I also understand this could be triggering for anyone who, is going through an alcohol, issue. But that's really what signaled to me. I think it's like memories, right? So with Scotch, I realized it's something when I first tasted it, I hated it. I was like, who drinks this crap? Like,
Exactly.
ugh, this is gross. Like I like the girly, the little tropical drinks and things. I still like those, but I realize sometimes there's things in life that if you just rush to try to enjoy them, they're not enjoyable. They need to be savored, right? So
Mhm.
that's why I like cigars and scotch because they force you to slow down. It's not something you down and you hurry up and smoke the cigar and you're done. There's like a 2 to 3 hour process to enjoy these things, if not more. Like my favorite cigar bar so far in the world is Hudson Bar and Books. I am not affiliated with them in New York City. And I love that place. So anytime my husband and I go back to the East Coast where we're from, I always have to go to Hudson Bar and Books. No one there has their phone out. There's no Instagramming going on. I love it. It's so freeing. And it feels like you're back in time, in some
Yeah.
time. I don't know what time. And it's just great because you're just like sipping your scotch and relaxing. It's not about getting drunk. It's about enjoying the time you have and the conversations. I mean, I remember one time we were there, my friend was in another part of New York in Queens. He had just come from like, was it a baseball or basketball? I think a baseball game. He
Mhm.
took the several subways to come and hang out with us there. So he shows up in like a sports jersey, and then he was drinking scotch with us and enjoying cigars. And I just thought, this is such a interesting moment. Like you couldn't have this any other way, really.
What kind of conversations do you usually have in that bar?
All kinds. I mean, you have silly ones where you're just catching up on gossip and things, but then I think we end up talking a lot about like life and family, friends in general, right? The struggles we're going through, everything. I think that's what's so cool is that you're not in a rush. There isn't like a rush to put a period at the end of the sentence because you don't know how the conversation's going to go. So I really like that it kind of just flows everywhere. So it's all kinds of topics, serious and not serious ones.
You are the first person in your family to graduate college. So, did you feel any pressure?
I felt immense pressure, Yuri. Like I was really worried about, holding up the family line and everything. I remember my mom, when I was younger, I was really annoyed because she's like, "Oh, you need to go to like an Ivy League school," and and she would tell me about other people's kids that did all these things, that played a million instruments and got straight A's and went to like Harvard or whatever. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I need to be like them." But then I realized, I don't know. Is it better to be like a really great version of me or a crappy version of some other kid, right? So I think I really, even though I had that fear, I still made it to a pretty good school. Like I went to Boston University. Um, I made it to a good school, but I was also not apologetic of not getting into an Ivy League. I realized I have a lot of different thoughts, different interests that I want to pursue, which was very confusing for my mom, right? I think nowadays she gets it. Like I'm a grown adult now, she gets that I always have a plan, even when I don't have a plan, because I am someone who's very guided by their values, their their spirit, right? It sounds very hippy dippy, but I know just over the weekend, a friend was telling me like, "Oh, you're a water sign, you're a Pisces, right? We're very like daydreamers." And I think I'm both. I'm very grounded sometimes. I'm very serious, right? Looking at the data, right? Examining things. But at the same time, I can be very goofy and like off in the world somewhere. So I kind of let both those sides of me take over when it makes sense.
And I also feel like you went through your own path still, even though you
Yeah.
had some of those expectations, you still chose your own path. And I wonder, what did your mother tell you at the graduation?
Oh, my college graduation. Oh, I don't remember what she told me, but I know that she was hopeful. I graduated college with a bachelor's degree in elementary education. So when you get that kind of degree, the whole point is you're supposed to go now and be an elementary education teacher, right? That's the path you're supposed to follow. But knowing I'm Phoebe, I'm like, well, maybe not. So when I graduated college, I went back to live with my mom because I was still, needing money and trying to look for a job. So I was looking for a job teaching. I was going to get certified to teach in New Jersey, where that's where I grew up. And while I was looking for a teaching job, at the same time, I realized, okay, I need to make money still. So I ended up finding two very different jobs that had nothing to do with teaching. One was I was working in a hair salon, like a high-end hair salon, as what they called a walker. I didn't even know these positions existed. I wasn't even a receptionist because I was so low on the totem pole. So my job was to say, "Hi, I'm Phoebe. I'm going to walk you to your hairstylist." And then I would walk the person to the bathroom, whatever. I was the walker. So I did that. And I also did a job working at a startup. And at the time, startups were not cool. This is like way back in the day. So startups were not cool. I just know now they were a startup. 30 people worked there. I saw that they needed someone to answer the phones, a receptionist. So I said, "Oh, I know how to answer phones. I could do that." So I went in for an interview. The person who interviewed me was their chief financial officer. She was also head of HR. And she was confused. She was like, "Okay, I see that you graduated from Boston University. It's a very good school. You want to come here and answer our phones. That's what you want to do." And I said, "Well, I'm a walker at another place, and I think I'm good with people, so I can answer phones here." She was like, "I think you could do more than answer phones for us. Do you want to pick a department and go and check it out, like try it out, and then maybe we can see how it works out?" So I picked marketing because there was only one person in their marketing department, and I figured I could help her. So she said, I remember this person said, "Okay, we'll try each other out for like 60 days. We'll pay you, obviously. If you like it, you keep it, keep the job. If we like you, you'll keep the job. But if things don't work out for either way, then we just part ways." And I just thought, now that I think about it, that was crazy because I had no marketing background. I I don't know why she hired me. I think she saw the spark. So I was doing both jobs. And my mom was like, "Okay, so I like work my what off. You can go to a good school. And I thought you were going to be a teacher. And now you're at a hair salon and you're kind of doing this marketing thing." Very confusing for her. And I said, "Mom, don't worry about it. I've got it." And she's like, "What do you have? I don't understand." I'm like, "I don't know either, but I know it's going to come. I'm going to focus on what I love and what I'm good at. I have to first learn what I'm good at because I don't even know that yet. Because school doesn't mean you're good at it. It just means you finish school with enough credentials to graduate, but you don't actually know your true strengths." So that's what I was working on. I'm still working on that now because our strengths are constantly shifting. And that's why if someone looks at my LinkedIn, they're like, "Wow, this person's always shifting. Are they flaky?" Maybe, but but I find it, instead of flaky, it's more that as my strengths are growing, certain ones are rising to the surface, certain ones are more, to the side. And I'm someone who I have to tap into my strengths, right? So to make a very long story shorter, I did not end up getting a teaching job. I did get an offer, but I declined the offer. My mom was like, oh my gosh. So I declined that offer. It was actually paying so much better. And I was like, I'm going to stick to this. I quit the walker job, and I stuck with this startup, and they were paying like nothing. And I was like, okay, I've got it. I know I can prove myself. So I got to do all this cool stuff, work directly with the CEO, work directly with all like the heads of the departments, everybody. It was the guys in the mailroom. And then I was like, I'm going to pick up as much as I can and just, go for it, make mistakes. And our company ended up getting bought by another company. At that time, I was like, wow, Silicon Valley. It was some company in Silicon Valley bought our company. So even though I was like the lowest person there, I still got a little bit of money, and I was able to move out of my mom's house and get my own apartment. So I felt like, it did work out. I didn't know it was going to work out like that, but sometimes when you trust in yourself, eventually it will work out.
And take risks.
Yeah, you have to take calculated risks, right? I think when you know yourself really well, you have to be able to manage expectations. Like I told myself, you don't know how this is going to turn out, but you have to make the best of it, get everything you can out of this experience. And if it ends really well, wonderful. If it doesn't, and also who defines what ending well means, right? Like for some people, it may be, wow, this company got bought. I'm in a better position. I got a promotion now. I'm going to stick here for a long time. I was like, what's the next thing I need to do? Now I'm realizing I'm good at communications and these other things. Where can I go? And then from there, that's when I started working at larger corporations like Johnson and Johnson, the pharmaceutical company. And I was able to go to different companies from there. Not because of any pedigree I had, but because they knew like I would hustle, that I would really tap into like the strengths that I have and be open-minded to learning.
Talking about strengths, how long have you been an activator?
Activator, yeah. That is one of my, oh, wait, I have my strengths here. Did I put this on my LinkedIn?
Yeah.
That's so funny. Oh, I'm so cheesy. All right. I'm cheesy. Activator. I don't know, because I know that since I've done this strengths finder this was what I just showed you. That's from like a leadership class I took last year. But it has shifted, right? Your top 5 strengths or your top strengths are always going to shift over time as you are using them. Right now, I think it's good that I'm an activator, and probably have been for the last several years, because when I'm going from different roles to different roles, you have to be an activator. Because if you're just sitting there waiting for someone to give you an assignment or to tell you what to do, then you're not going to be successful anywhere, right? And now, given that I'm running a campaign for office, I really have to tap into my activator skills, because that is what's going to get things going. Because it's very easy just to have the day ahead and say, well, I'll get to that tomorrow. Okay, I need to raise money for my campaign. I can't hope that I'll get to it next week. I've got to be able to hit the ground running, and that's what an activator does. And I think on the other side of it, an activator is, you're not just a self-activator, you help activate other people and ideas. And I think that's something that I really enjoy doing. Like if I'm talking to a friend and they don't realize like how good they are at like graphic design, right? Maybe they do some stuff on Canva on the side, but I'm like, wow, you're so good at that. Like what else could you be doing with that? Right? To kind of learn more and maybe make, if you wanted to make money off of that. But I love helping to activate others. I think even more so than myself.
No, it's so interesting. I'm asking you because when I saw your top 5 strengths, like activator, maximizer, adaptability, developer, and input, I was like, oh, wow, we're almost the same, except for my
Oh,
third one is belief, but every other
yeah.
are totally the same. And I was like, okay, we'll talk about it. Let's do it.
That's
And
so interesting.
it's
That's so
so
cool.
fun. Yeah, totally. And talking about this, I'm curious, what kind of mom are you?
What kind of mom am I? Probably have to ask my son Shy, but I think I am very adaptable at times. I would like to think I'm adaptable, right? That I could go with the flow, that I'm a cool mom. But I also know sometimes I'm very rigid. So I'm trying to balance it out because I know that the way I was raised, being first generation raised in this country, it's different, right? Because when I was first raising my son, I was trying to mimic the way my mom raised me, which was you do what I say, you're quiet, you don't talk back. And I'm like, oh, my son's like like he's different and I'm different. I'm a different person than my mom was. We have a lot of the same traits, but in America, we're taught to be outspoken, right? So when my son is outspoken and tells me what he wants and doesn't want, I get annoyed and I realize he's just, this is the environment he's raised in. And he sees how outspoken my husband and I are. So
Mhm.
how is he not going to be this way? So I don't know what kind of a parent I am because I'm constantly shifting, right? I'm constantly being adaptable to the situation. And sometimes I'm too rigid, right? Like one example is my son really got into athletics got into high school last year. So he started playing football, and I was like, oh, football, like American football. I find it so distasteful, and I'm like, oh, certain people play football, like they're not that smart, just all these kind of like toxic beliefs that I have. Um, and I just felt like, why can't he do something else? Can he do more volunteering? Like I was trying to make him like a mini me. I'm like, why can't he be more like doing these things? And I realized, oh, I want him to do the things I like, but I'm not giving enough chance to the things that he enjoys. I realized by him taking sports, he's learning leadership, he's learning teamwork, right? He's learning responsibility because you can't be the person who's late to practice or doesn't train, right? And doesn't get good grades, right? Those are the things that are important. So I realized sometimes I can appear adaptable, but I'm trying to like control things. And I think the more you try to control, the more you make it hard for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Do you learn from your son?
Oh, every day. Yeah, I learn every day. I mean, I make fun of him. We make fun of each other a lot, but I learn so much because I think one thing I really learn is like just remember that you are someone like fun, that you have a lot of interest. Like he's like really into music and live concerts. That's something I love, right? So I realized like, I don't really like some of the music he listens to. And I realized, wow, I sound really old and out of date, that if I really love music, that means I open my mind to music that I'm not sure about. So I realized some of the music that he plays with me and shows me, I realized I do like some of this. So we have gone to some concerts together, and I think that's important. And I'm not going to say I love everything he listens to. That's okay, but it's more like opening myself to the experience of it.
Why do you love street art?
Yeah, street art, graffiti, just because I love it's like an act of rebellion, right? And I think anytime there's like someone who's like a poet or an artist, especially when they're doing it out in the street, they're not necessarily getting like money for it. I find that such an act of rebellion, and I find that fascinating. And when I go to different cities and I see the different art that's reflected, like when I go to SF, because that's really close to where I live, there's different kind of flavor of art than when I go to, I don't know, like New York City, right? It's really different. Um, I just always art. I'm a big fan of any kind of art, but I think street art is just something where I can see someone's soul like on a wall, and that is just mind blowing to me.
Have you ever done some graffiti yourself?
No, I'm terrible at that. I wish I was so talented. I think that's why I like living vicariously through these artists. And I think something else I love about street art is that, unlike if you're painting on a canvas, which you can kind of fix the mistakes, right? Along the way, you can erase things and paint over. When you're a street artist, this is what I'm imagining because I'm not one, you kind of have to hurry up because you are maybe doing art in a place that you shouldn't be doing. So you have to do this maybe in 5 minutes. You've got to get your piece done. And so you've got to kind of show your mistakes to the world as well. So I think that's the part that really resonates for me.
I have this thing because of Jenny Weigel. She proposed to have this previous guests questions. So,
Mm.
previous guest question. What would you do with your life if money was not a factor?
Wow, that is an amazing question. Well, I think there's I'm going to say a few different things. One is I want to make sure everyone in my family is taken care of, right? Because if money wasn't a factor, I want to make sure no one has bills to pay anymore. I think what I would want to do is start some kind of foundation, right, to address an issue that is really important in our community. I think that's why I'm running for office, is because I feel like I have some skills that can help with some of the issues. But again, that would be scratching the surface. If I could get the money together to build a foundation and just focus on one or two related issues, I feel like I can get a lot done. So that's what I would do. And I also want to travel. I want to do all the things. Not sure when I would travel if I'm running this foundation, but I guess I'll figure it out.
Phoebe, I wish to have the sky as the limit, but time is the limit to our conversation. So let's jump to the rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Oh, okay. Oh, I think so.
Stand-up comedy or comedy movie?
Stand-up comedy for sure.
Cook a spicy dish or read an exciting book?
Spicy dish.
What are your favorite color and song?
Favorite color. Ooh. It is black, even though people say it's not. And then favorite song? Ooh, that is a tough one. Um, Actually, at the moment, I would say it's anything by Max Richter. He is a composer, a modern composer that I love. So it isn't one song, it's this whole suite of songs that are just so moving.
If you were a superhero, what superpower would you have?
Oh, this is a tough one. To heal people?
Who do you learn from? Name just one person.
My mom.
Name two people whom I should definitely reach out to and have this conversation with.
Oh, I think Regina Walton would be one, and Demario Bell.
Got it. Ask it forward. It's like pay it forward, but with questions. So ask a question a future guest will have to answer.
It's a good one. Sorry, I'm like thinking. It doesn't need to be this deep, right?
It's up to you.
What is something that brings you pure delight?
Is there one question that I definitely should have asked you but didn't?
Oh, wow. I don't know. I don't think so. I think we had a really great conversation.
I still have so many questions, but as I told, I wish to have the sky as a limit, but time is a limit. So definitely we'll have volume two one day. And Phoebe, I totally understand why people tell you that when they're talking to you, it feels like there is no one else in the world. And I would add from my side that it feels like time flies because I feel like we've just started this conversation and we're already here, our long conversation finished. And I, from the moment I met you on Zoom, I felt this connection that, okay, this is a person I want to talk to. This is a person I want to learn from. This is a person I want to discuss things with. I don't know how you do it, but you do it amazingly. So thank you very much for that. And thank you very much for sharing
Thank
some
you.
vulnerable moments from your life.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
And yeah, see you in the community world.